Hi all. Well, after our tuner came round to help me out for a few hours, we bashed out some things and come across a brick wall and a few others. I love the M-Tron KV8 ECU, but it does seem like it is a little bit, unless I want to say limited, that doesn't sound right. It doesn't like control boxes that are on the CAN bus that are not from itself, should we say. So the 12-position Blink Marine keypad in the roof, it needs a master. The keypad was a slave. It needs a master. Unfortunately, my PDM, it doesn't have that ability to be the master to it, and neither did the ECU. So the 12-button Blink Marine keypad that was in the roof is now gone and has been replaced by a M-Tron programmed Greyhill 8-button. So we've got to add an extra couple of ordinary buttons, one for the suspension up and down, and I can't think what the other one is offhand, but basically we started to reprint this. Obviously it's not very hard to redo the CAD drawing and then just print it out. So we now have this keypad that's fully functional, and it can be slaved to the ECU, no problem at all. So obviously it's very easy to connect in because it has exactly the same 4-pin DT connector. So this obviously being the 128k resistor at the end of the canvas. So connecting it in was pretty simple. Yes, so that was one thing we had an issue with, that now it's resolved. The next 2 or 3 things, the CAN checked IO expanders I have, they need to be flashed. That can be done, and I think Nick, the M-Tron ambassador for the North America, who I've been in contact with, and so has Evan, my engine tuner, basically says it'll just charge an hour's labour just to flash the 2 IO units so the M-Tron can see them, and basically that won't be an issue. Now, the next stumbling block was the fact that because this M-Tron didn't like any of the other boxes, and because I've mixed and matched, I have a ECU Masters EGT to CAN box with all, obviously, 8 exhaust gas temperature probes. Yeah, it wasn't going to see that. It wasn't going to read it. That would be a pain. Also, the wireless steering wheel controller, or shall we say the transmitter, and also the TPMS. I was just having problems struggling, basically making the ECU aware of those items and basically being able to read it properly, and it just wasn't. It's not as simple. The HP electronic PDM is really quite simple. I say it can't control the keypad as such, but effectively is a really simple unit, and it's very, very easy to get it to look at the CAN stream, look at a particular CAN ID and a bit and a byte, and away you go. So programming the steering wheel to do, the high beam, the horn, the rotary for the wipe and wash sequence, not a problem. Just a shame the M-Tron wasn't as easy as that to set up. So the big elephant in the room, we had to basically say goodbye to our PowerTune digital dashboard, and we now have, if anybody knows, this is a Plex 700M, or should I say SDM 700. It's a dash, it's also a logger, it's also almost like a small PLC. It has a bunch of math channels, it has a bunch of, it's like a small ECU in some respects. It does actually have some IO in itself. Not that I'll be using much of that, but what it can do is I can read the CAN stream for whatever I want, as in the EGT sensors, as in the TPMS system. It can read it and then transmit it on a different ID with a different bit and byte configuration. So basically, for everybody in black and white, the dashboard can read French and transmit in English, shall we say. Well, CAN bus English. So we can use this as a translator. So the information that I can't get to the ECU, I can now transmit it to the ECU on an ID and a byte location that the ECU can actually read. So I keep pointing down here, but that's because that's where the ECU is. So, not exactly cheap, but very, very powerful in comparison to the old dash, which really was just purely a display. This is like way, way more powerful. Has, oh geez, I think it was 128 gigabyte of logging memory, which is massive. It is based off a USB stick, so it basically is a lot easier to pull out. This has the ability to actually look at the logs on the screen when you're stationary, and basically you can look at the log files. Apparently that's a unique feature. Most log files can only be read by a laptop. This one, not so much. You can actually read it on the screen. It also has all the track features. It also has all the GPS mapping and the 6-way accelerometers, so it has all of that stuff in there. You can do all your 0 to 60 times and like quarter-mile times and stuff. It'll calculate that out. So it has all that ability, and instead of like just 4 pages that the old power tuning, this has 48 individual pages that you can program. Now, if I ever get past 10 or 15, that'll probably be a miracle. But realistically, it has the capability to have 48 individually created pages, but obviously similar to the power tune, you can actually like import figures, JPEGs, whatever it is, and incorporate them into the screen and build your own dashes. So now the ability to do 48 screens means that it does need to be controlled more than just by a couple of things. So we've plumped, instead of having multiple buttons, we've now got a sort of BMW-esque Blink Marine rotary, which it can control, thank God. So you can dial around. So obviously that's a push button, and there's various other key buttons to scroll through the screens. Now, this actually has to be set up. Yeah, I've literally only just finished 3D printing the bracket that it mounts to. Obviously, I had to 3D print a lot of stuff. The roof enclosure was done. The back plate, which was aluminium on the last car, to be totally honest, I 3D printed this one in ASA, and to be honest, it's strong enough without the billet, so I'm not going to bother with the billet. This front cover, which is a separate piece, which surrounds the dash and sort of covers up the fact the dash is sitting inside something. This we will machine in billet. I've just test printed to make sure it's okay, and obviously the housing itself is 3D printed. We've got to flock this. Now I had to alter the top quite a bit. Due to the fact that we've already cut the area of the top of the dash, obviously this is the body turned upside down, this has already been cut out and set. I basically had to copy the old dash setting below in the below 2/3, had to make sure that was exactly the same. So we've just altered the top. So in the CAD drawing, I basically just cut the top off, reformed it so that it fit this dash. It was still a 7-inch, but effectively the dash is slightly taller, but actually slightly narrower. So we've redone that, so we 3D printed everything again, and we're about ready now to basically cut the outer casing. But we'll do this in polished billet because it kind of matches the theme that I have in here. So the billet cover for this, handbrake cover, gear linkage, so I'd like to do that. It's just a cover piece, so it really doesn't do a huge amount. We'll have the warning lights in here. We can actually probe them on the screen now if I wanted to, but it is handy, especially for UK IVA, if you need to basically have the indicators once the car is turned off. You can have the hazard warning lights on, so basically the 2 hazard lights will come on. So it's an advantage to have them here, I think. So we'll have the indicators left, right, high beam and fog as separate lights. All the rest of them will run straight in through the dash. So yeah, a lot of programming to do. Bit of rewiring to do. Obviously this just speaks to that via CAN bus. It has twin CAN bus on this and LIN bus, so basically I'll run a second CAN line between the two, so that's dedicated, mainly so I don't have to worry about breaking into the original CAN bus and adding an extra one. So yeah, hopefully now the TPMS system, well, we can display the TPMS on the dash. It's probably not of much use for the ECU. But the EGT sensors, we can put it into the dash and either send individual 8 EGT readings to the ECU, or we can, probably what's going to do is just do a mean average of the 8 just to give the engine, just to give the ECU an idea where it is. Now, one thing that Evan did ask me to do was to add a exhaust gas pressure. So basically, exhaust pressure. We have a port here already, luckily, which I blanked off because we're going to have a single EGT instead of the obviously individual ported. So now we've got this one here that's going to be hard pipe connected to this little, as you can see this here, this little reservoir here. Now in the top of that reservoir, you can see here, this is a pressure sender. So we have, yet again, 3D printed another bracket. This is in PETCF, so it won't start deforming until it's like 210 centigrade or something stupid. So the idea of having this little sort of reservoir here and hard piped all the way to there is the fact that the temperature of the exhaust gas basically will sort of decrease, and there's a bunch of filters and stuff in here to stop this getting too clogged up. But having exhaust gas pressure is an advantage for a turbo motor. So we also made a mistake with where we wanted the IATs. I thought I wanted the air inlet temperatures in the manifold and pre-throttle. Basically, we didn't need pre-throttle. So we've put it actually in we've got the single air temperature inside the plenum. And we've only got pressure map sensors pre-throttle and obviously post-throttle. Didn't need that. If it's a brass sensor, apparently there can be some lag, but effectively with a plastic sensor, that's not a problem. And most of these twin map Bosch sensors with pressure and temperature isn't an issue. So we've done a bit of rewiring because I don't need a 4-pin, so we've got 3 pins here. Once the plug's in there, and I'll shorten that to the exact length, cut that and make the plug up for it. Since last we spoke, the intake manifold now is completely on. I did have a minor issue with the intake manifold. It was when we bolted it up to the right head, if I can get my hand out of the way, where the intake manifold sits on the head here, there was a gap at the base of like 0.5 mil. So if you can imagine the V of an engine here and here, should we say, this side head was okay. That side, the intake manifold, was machined too much like this, so I could get a feeler gauge into the bottom of it. Now, I turned the manifold around to see if the fault transferred, and it did. So it's not the head problem, it was a problem with the machining of the Holley Hiram base, which is the bit I didn't make. It turns out it was yes, it needed help. So I had to strip the manifold off, stick it on the mill, dial it in, and then basically machine 0.5 mil off the top face to sink it down. Now, luckily, when I did that, the manifold, where the alignment between the ports of the intake manifold and the ports in the head, the manifold did need to go down some, so they lined up a little bit better. So by machining that, luckily, they left on some material, which when I machined it down, it dropped it, so the port match got better. So, annoyance, yes. Pain in the bum, absolutely. But not a huge one. Hadn't cost me a huge amount other than just machining time, my own labour time. So the intake manifold is now on, sealed. We put the revised steam pipe connections for the 4 corners of the head, and now that goes through to that small -4 hose, which goes into the expansion pot. We've obviously previously done the oil pressure, done the oil lines. There was a couple of leaks, so we've got rid of those. We redid the gearbox pump, unfortunately, because that was more of a transfer pump than a pressure pump. So now we've got a Tilton pump in there. So now the gearbox oil lines have all done. We've had those running. Not so good running when it's cold. It really needs the oil to warm up a little bit. It's not a pump you'll stick on straight away. You basically get the engine up to temperature and the gearbox up to temperature before you fire that on. But gearbox oil fittings all done, engine oil fittings all done and pressure tested, and we've had the water on. And we filled the radiators and everything else. Filled it with just pure water for the moment, just to be sure, before we put the glycol in. And obviously we have a block heater in here, so I left the block heater on overnight, turned the water pump, and we got the engine up to like 42 degrees C. No problem at all, no leaks anywhere. There was one minor taper fitting on the hard pipe, so I just put a bit of PTFE tape around it, and no leaks. So happy with that. So all the water pipes are done. We crimped the last AC hose, so that's just ready for just throw that back on. I had to take the AC condenser off just to basically to get this hose out and get it crimped. So we are close now to basically doing the fuel system. I've got one fitting that I don't like and I've ordered, so better just wait for that to come. And we have ordered a pair of Deutsche Werks 810 litres an hour pumps. I only need to run one, but theoretically you can run the pumps in low and high at 55% duty cycle. So the 700 horsepower is not a problem with running the pump on low. And basically once I get above a certain amount of boost, we'll just get the ECU to turn the pump into high. So now we've got a spare pump in the fuel tank, but one pump is good enough to do all of it. So one pump's good enough for like 1500 horsepower on E85. So you're never going to get to that kind of horsepower level probably with like 94 octane normal street pump gas, and you'll easily get to 1500 horsepower with probably 110 octane race gas. So more than we're going to need. We can raise the fuel pressure now, the base fuel pressure 10 psi, so that the injectors now, instead of flowing 1063 at 45 psi, they'll now run at roughly 1300 cc's. So basically the fuel injection side of it is not the limiting factor now. The only limiting factor of like gaining horsepower with this thing now is probably the detonation limit of like 94 octane race gas. So whatever we can get, 94 octane pump gas. So now that's the limiter. So I'm hoping to go and hit, if I can, I want to try and get 1350 horsepower or 1 megawatt of power. Now that might mean I may have to run it on race gas just to get into that safe limit, but I doubt I'm going to get past 1100 on like regular pump fuel, but we'll see what happens. At this point now, it's just a big question mark. But water systems in, oil systems are done, fuel systems next test. Once the fuel system's tested, then realistically, it's just finish off the intercooler plumbing. All of that stuff's already been done. There's a mount just to make for the pump here, but effectively all the pipes cut and all the tubes are bent. So I'm very close now to having all of the fluid systems done and tested, which is great. Once we will drop the body, center section sills, and take off the rear clip for the dyno. Once we come back from the dyno and everything's happy, we've basically made sure that the wheel speed sensors or the ABS sensors are tracking, everything's good on there. Then I'll finally feel happy to basically permanently attach the sill tops on, and we'll basically remove most of the stuff from the dash here to gain access to the wiring loom, and then we will wrap the loom. We'll wrap the loom complete, because everything sort of behind the dashboard here I've left open, I haven't wrapped. Everything through the side sills and everything, the engine bay and everything front of the bulkhead is all heat shrinked and wrapped, but this side of it isn't, just in case I needed to do some updates. But once we come back from the dyno, it'll be body off, wrap this, and then we'll bolt the side sills, rivet the side sills on properly. We'll put the body back on, hopefully for the last time, and we'll basically get through the little city jobs to get the car ready for the road. So the registration process isn't too hard. It's just basically getting a guy to come out and inspect the car. We'll get the VIN plate hopefully sorted, maybe even before the dyno. And then after that, we'll have to, do stuff as we go. But we are close. Yes, it still looks stripped, but effectively, literally, to put all the body panels on, the side sills, the doors, it literally takes me maybe 3 or 4 hours. And that's with doing all the little fine adjustments. So realistically, putting this stuff on now, it's all done, it's all trimmed. It really isn't very hard to get back to what looks like a finished car again. But we're getting there. It's not long now, not long at all. Anyway, thought we'd do an update. Yes, we spent quite a bit of money on that dash, but it is pretty much the answer to all of the issues that I've had with integration of all the other systems. So haven't had to change that lot. Did have to change the dash, but the dash is a big upgrade, and it's a proper logger, so I can do most of my stuff on the dash without having to really do too much inside the ECU, and I can set it up, set the logging channels and everything else up on the dash with that rotary without even a laptop. So, you know, the likelihood of me needing a laptop to the side of the car, front of the passenger seat now might still do the bracket because everything's there. But I might not need it now because I can probably do most of that stuff through the dash. And then download the log files if I want to do some stuff at home. And obviously that's Wi-Fi as well, so I can drive into the garage and basically offload the log files just through the Wi-Fi. There we go. Okay, I'm rabbiting on. I shall, once the dash is all fired up, I'll do a couple of short videos. But for the moment, that's the major progress on the car. But now at least we've got, yeah, it's a big step for me, so I'll rabbit on. Okay, speak to you all soon.